Hey, everyone. Doobies and Movies 35. Sorry it's late. Been a bit behind, but there's a lot to discuss on a very special episode of WandaVision. It is pretty much the biggest, or easily the biggest episode of WandaVision so far. It is the biggest probably MCU stuff we've seen in a long, long time. So there's a lot to go through. So um, just just a few of the themes and the topics that we had today. We're gonna touch on all the little questions that are left over for the future episodes. Joe and Steve are with me, so
Yo,
I'm just trying to wonder where to start because there's so much going on. So I guess
let's start the end.
no, we're not starting at the end. We're building up to the end. Steve, because you didn't interrupt me, do you want, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure.
What did you think of the episode?
I thought it was a really, really good episode, to be honest. I thought it was another one where we're really getting an insight of what's going on out of the static with Wanda and Vision, and you're getting a real good insight into how Sword has kind of developed, and you've even got, Darcy and whatnot still making appearances and still showing that they're doing their work on the other side. I thought that this episode was also really good as well because it did actually touch on something that Joel mentioned on a previous Doobies episode that we were talking about. That you said that it would be kind of mad if Wanda was using Vision's corpse in the static, and then in this episode it went to go talk about how Wanda broke in to Sword and took Vision's body. So it's plausible that could be correct, or it could be close to being correct.
Does seem to be alive now, though, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, though. This episode is kind of it's broken down that a little bit more, and it's shown as to how Vision could be alive, how Vision could be dead. It could just be because even in that episode, you saw Wanda and Vision bickering about Wanda's kind of choices with keeping people in the static, and just holding them against their will, and the way she treated Geraldine or Monica, and the kids growing up quicker and quicker. I thought this episode was just really, really good. I think it's probably like you said, Anton, at the start, best one so far. So yeah, I've got nothing but good things for this.
Joel, why don't you give a little summary of what you thought before I get into? I've written quite a few things down to make sure I don't forget. But yeah, go ahead. What do you think of the episode?
Sick, wasn't it? Yeah, no, great episode. Best. This is the one that I'm fully hyped on. I think it's won a lot of people over as well. Seeing online, fewer and fewer people are, oh, what is this stupid show? A lot of people are finally getting behind it, which is nice. It's kind of annoying me. The first couple of episodes, a lot of people weren't really getting it. But yeah,
that was always going to happen with the approach of doing it.
Of course. But I was like, God, just give them time, And I expected to take more time to really get balls deep into it.
Yeah, now they're balls deep.
Balls deep.
Yeah. I agree with everything said. It was mad. It was fully. I really enjoyed, obviously, all of it. Episode 4 as well, a lot. But this was the first episode that really had me feeling like I was back in the cinema again, watching one of these movies, where the opportunity was there for anything to happen, and the door was being opened for anything to happen. Now, there's a lot to actually break through and discuss. So I've written a few things down. And I guess we'll start with the first thing I've written down, just because it's a way to organize it. So one of the things going through this episode was Wanda versus Sword. You had Sword obviously dealing with Monica. She's now come back out of the hex that they're calling it, which we can talk about more in a bit, the significance of that word. But she comes out and she informs them that it's Wanda who's in control, and you've got this little battle, obviously also within Sword itself, between the director Tyler and obviously the intentions that Monica and Jimmy and Darcy actually have. But you've got that situation where Sword are trying to save the people in Westview. That's one thing that all of Sword can agree on. And you've got basically that one big confrontation that Sword sending a drone. Monica thinks it's unarmed. Monica just wants to communicate with Wanda, but dickhead Tyler Dickwad, he armed it and actually wants to kill Wanda or shoot Wanda. I don't know if he's actually idiotic enough to believe he can kill her. But he doing that, she basically steps out of the hex and channels her inner Magneto, and basically after a long conversation in which her accent does come back, she basically channels her Magneto from the X-Men movies, the way she turns all the guns on.
That was. I didn't think that. That's a very Magneto moment.
Yes, it was very Magneto. It's got to be conscious. It's got to be conscious because obviously in the comics, she's Magneto's daughter, and however much they play with that going forward, we don't know. But that was a nice little Magneto touch. But the Wanda sword battle was interesting because we saw Wanda, I guess, in her full villainy at that point and her full aggression. And the only time we've seen her outside of this sitcom world. So, yeah, what do you guys think of, firstly, the way Elizabeth Olsen played that scene? And also, yeah, what was revealed in that scene in terms of the conversations with her and Monica and Tyler? Anyone can go ahead first.
I thought that it was pretty sick, to be honest. I thought the whole scene where she just comes out of the hex and she's just really pissed off with the whole helicopter thing, and that she just immediately turns on the sword chief and gets all them to just point their guns all at him with the lasers and everything. And the way she kind of like discusses things with Monica, you really get to see Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda in this kind of position where she's so kind of hell-bent on just trying to have the perfect life possible after losing everything. She's willing to, do anything, even if it means, do exactly the thing that she doesn't want to be, which is like this horrible villain, but she's willing to do that just so she can life with Vision. And I think that the whole premise of Darcy and Monica being there, Monica understanding that it's all coming from Wanda, but it's not out of malice, and yet Sword is still there, just like they've taken people hostage. She's keeping them there against their will. She's making them do things they don't want to do. It's obviously not a good thing, but Wanda just doesn't give a shit either way. She's just that, passionate about being with Vision that she will do anything for that, which I think is sick.
And in terms of Monica's role in the whole thing, what I found interesting and what actually gives me for respect as for Monica as a character and I guess as a person in this context, but obviously she's not real. But what I liked about Monica was that she came out of that, and I think that's why, again, like I was going on to about who ends up being on the good side of this philosophical battle in Marvel. Monica is smart enough because she's a good person and her pursuit is actually one that's good. She can see what's actually going on, whereas Tyler can just see, foreign girl, used to be, experimented on by Hydra, has a history you can turn. He kind of turns her into talking about like she's a terrorist. And Monica is aware enough to know from being in that world, these subconscious things that Wanda has done and these safeguards she's put in to not harm people. She kind of mentions a couple of things, but one of the things she says to Wanda in this specific scene is that you trusted me to deliver your baby. So on some level, you must know that I'm a good person and I'm an ally. I thought that was it shows Monica's intelligence as an agent to be able to clock these things. But it was just a really nice touch of, again, Marvel know who's a good guy and a bad guy. Like, and Monica's definitely on that level of trying to see things from a different perspective. But obviously, Sword and Tyler, like I say, there was that moving on naturally to that conversation that they had before, where you see Wanda stealing Vision's corpse, like you said at the beginning, and how he goes on to kind of talk about like she was radicalized, she was experimented on, like, oh, she's pretty much a motherfucking terrorist. He kind of has this kind of little speech, and then first Jimmy Woo's a bit like, and I like how Jimmy Woo, he's not that confident and sure of himself. So, and he knows he's like below ranking as well. So he's kind of like, like the Avengers trust her, kind of like quite calmly and softly, kind of trying to tell him he's being an idiot. And then Monica comes in with that big, like, basically saying that obviously there's more to it than meets the eye, and Wanda is not all bad. And what did she say? It wasn't premeditated or something like that.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So beyond that, the next thing I got on here is Wanda v Vision. Now, the other main conflict, which obviously makes it far more interesting than it just being the one reality versus the other, is the fact that within Wanda's reality, Vision is obviously learned quite a lot. He gets the message on the computer. To be honest, he's suspicious from the beginning. All these weird things keep happening. He's obviously tracking on it, which obviously then leads to suggest about what level of consciousness Vision it has. But so he gets the email or whatever, or the message, and then he fucking zaps.
Motherfucker.
Is that gonna be a weekly thing?
I've jogged some fucking backy in my laptop and it's just gone into the bottom of the space bar. Whenever I touch anything on my keyboard, that noise goes off. It's so annoying.
Yeah, no, don't worry. Anyway, yeah. So Vision zaps that guy out, and basically he says that she's controlling me, whatever. But he doesn't actually say who, which I find quite interesting. Is it actually Agnes? Who knows? Who knows? But the bit where Vision zaps out of, or like whatever, like he actually confronts Wanda. Like, I talked to Norman, she's like, what do you mean? And he's just like, he says that thing, what is it? It's so sick. It's like his suppressed mind free of your oversight. Yeah. He says something so sick like that and just spins it on her as he's like washing a mug, and they end up fucking arguing and both flying like mad in the air, about to like blast each other to bits, and then obviously Wanda ends up calming him down. But do you think it is Wanda that is controlling it all? Because even Vision doesn't seem to be totally convinced by the end that it is Wanda that's doing everything. And obviously, what?
She said she's doing it, right?
No, she didn't. She said, do you really think I'm making everyone walk their dogs at once? Everyone do this and controlling every single thing.
I don't know what's going on, but I like it and I want things to stay where they are because I want to be a Vision, right?
Yeah, but it's obviously a certain amount that she's controlling. But what I'm starting to think is that, again, it'd be too obvious for them to tell us that so quickly. And I do think that this Agnes has so much more control of it as well. She must have some control in it. She must be doing something.
Yeah, and there's also the aspect of like Wanda's kids. Like even Wanda, when like she's kind of head and pretending and whatnot. Even she doesn't understand why her kids are aging really quickly, and all these kind of factors as to why these little kind of things are happening in that world that she can control to some degree of what goes on, but there are certain things even she can't explain. So I think that it's fair to say that she's controlling, when it comes down to, say, people like Norm, who are, just not really aware of everything. They're kind of just not really living because they're trapped. They will blame it on Wanda because of her power and ability. But there'll be other things going on in the Hex that Wanda has no idea what's going on with them. And yet there's something obviously not quite right, which I agree. I think Agnes is probably going to be some kind of key part in that, because I find it quite coincidental that she was there in that episode when they, the kids were, aged from being like 6 to 10 or something, and then got a dog, and then the dog passed away, and she was the one who found the dog. Do you know what I mean? Like, it sounds a bit kind of coincidental that she was the one that found the dead dog.
Yeah, I agree. Leading on from that, obviously we talked a little bit about how Agatha Harkness, the witch, she's been rumored to be, because of the similar name, a few other little touches they've made, and the fact that she's a witch that is a big part of Scarlet Witch's learning of her powers, basically. But something else that jumps out at me, and I think has been talked about by a lot of people at the moment who are speculating. I don't know if they're speculating that she is this person, but I wouldn't be also that surprised if she also could be Mephisto, the kind of devil-like demon that Ghost Rider is Ghost Rider's archenemy, but he also is part of the creation of Wanda's twins in the comics, and he's also a large part to do with both Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange. So whether she is Agatha Harkness or is actually a misdirect and she's Mephisto, or which I've also seen people say is that Evan Peters could be Mephisto.
No, I've seen that. Yeah.
There's a lot of out there about Mephisto at the moment, which is starting to make me think we might get Mephisto. Also, potentially Nightmare, who is looking like going to be the villain in Doctor Strange 2, who basically revolves in the dream dimension, is also someone who has the chance of maybe having something to do with this. So there's quite a few of these kind of interesting characters who we get revealed in the next few episodes. It's going to be interesting.
What their motivation would be, whoever the villain is. Why are they putting Wanda in this world? What's in it for them?
That's something that I don't really know, to be honest. Like, if it's something to do with controlling Wanda's power or Vision's power. Yeah.
That seems to be quite a big thing now, with them not wanting anybody to resurrect Vision.
It could also be to do with the fact that maybe they just have certain goals and whatnot, that if Wanda wasn't in the hex, therefore it would be a problem. So maybe it's not gaining anything from Wanda, maybe it's just not losing anything because of Wanda.
Yeah, that's a good idea actually as well, that she's being kept in that hex. So yeah, we don't actually know, and there's so much I think to be revealed. I really think that what this last episode made me feel is there's so much more is going to happen in the next 4 episodes. Like, the fact that they've given us this idea that Wanda's the villain so early on leads me to think that she's not, and there's so much more still left to be revealed in these next few episodes. Obviously, I do think part of it is Wanda, and they are opening up the extent of her powers.
Thoughts, right? Like, that's for sure.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And yeah, you touched on Vision's living will, as they called it, where he didn't want to be revived or turned into a weapon or any of this stuff, which is interesting to kind of hear about. But yeah, the opportunities are endless, and I do think with the fact that we're kind of running out of decades as well, slowly but surely we are going to start just getting to some mad action. And I do think there has to be a lot more, kind of, because the way they're taking this, it does feel like they are just trying to kick open the whole universe for phase 4, like with a proper bang. And I do think the consequences of this will be quite large, which means that I do think that there has to be some big things happening if it really sets up Doctor Strange 2 as well.
Setting up the idea of the multiverse, if it's like, I mean, the thing is, like, I mean, it could be somewhat of a, I don't know, just kind of a tease or a Easter egg kind of thing, having Evan Peters as Quicksilver. But also, I mean, surely it's more likely that this has at least something to do with the multiverse and something to do with.
Well, yeah, let's talk about Evan Peters then. So obviously he shows up at the end, and they make the joke that Pietro has been recast, and Evan Peters from the X-Men film shows up rather than Aaron Taylor-Johnson. And I actually disagree, Joe. I actually don't think it's got anything to do with the multiverse. I think, yeah, I don't.
At least a little nod to the audience.
I think it's a joke on the fact that in sitcoms, siblings were very often recast with different people in like loads of these sitcoms that they've been playing with as well. And a lot of sitcoms I remember growing up with, I was like, why is the sister or the brother now different? I do think that is definitely a thing. Obviously, the multiverse is an option, but I don't think that's the guy who was in X-Men Apocalypse and Days of Future Past and stuff. I think that's not someone who's just come from those films and shown up at Wanda's house.
Okay, sure. I think that's true. But I still think there may be a middle ground where it's like they've used his image from the multiverse, or they've, one of these people, Mephisto or somebody,
Yeah. That I like. Yeah, Mephisto or Agatha Harkness or Nightmare or whoever's out there.
They know about the multiverse. They're like twigged into this, and they're kind of taking his image and using that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I think that is possible. I think I like those things where it's not one or the other, it's somewhere in the middle. I also don't think this means we won't see Aaron Taylor. I'm actually now starting to think it's more likely that we might actually see Aaron Taylor in the show at some point. So yeah, Evan Peters is huge. It's huge what it means going forward, even just as a symbol that Disney own Fox now, and and the X-Men films are dead, and it's all moving forward with the MCU. But
it is the same like he looks the same, right? They've done the same look for Quicksilver, yeah.
yeah, but they've also played him like the 80s as well, because I think Apocalypse is in the 80s, so it is like that. But it's also, I think, again, playing on that long lost brother trope from sitcom, the cool brother that comes back in from another tap. They're still also playing on the sitcom tropes, I think. Okay.
It styled him kind of like the way that Aaron Taylor Johnson was Quicksilver, but it was still obviously Evan Peters. So
yeah, I mean, they both have the silver hair from the comics as well, always.
Yeah, well, I feel like the silver hair that he had in WandaVision then was the same kind of silver hair that he had in Age of Ultron, whereas the silver hair he had in Days of Future Past was like literally just all the hair was like greyish silver, whereas that one it's more kind of like the top bit's like really light bright silver, if you see what I'm saying. Like it's a slight difference, but I feel like they're making it so that it's close to Aaron Taylor Johnson's one as possible, at least for this part.
Yeah, and I do think that, I think that one's an impossible one to predict, because I think it's totally out of left field what they're doing there. It's not even from the comics. It's like, what is Evan Peters? Who is it? Is Evan Peters even Mephisto? Like a lot of theories say. It is really like quite mad. I think the main other thing, not just of the whole episode, but the main other thing going forward, that is something that we can speculate on maybe a bit more than who Evan Peters is who is the aerospace engineer friend of Monica Rambeau that she tells Jimmy and Darcy, I've got this Iranian aerospace engineer, I've got a friend. Now, I've been looking up who people think this person is, and the most dominant one, because apparently in Spanish and Portuguese subtitles, it reveals that she's referring to a woman due to the difference in language.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think, or I don't just think, but the world seems to think, and the most likely one, based on if that is legitimately true, is Ironheart. Riri Williams, who takes over the Iron Man's mantle, introducing her as and she says someone to be really excited to help. It makes sense, a young woman who looks up to Monica, who has obviously the skills of Tony Stark potentially, would be someone that could come and help out to set up also her own show.
Yeah.
Beyond that, if you're leaving behind this idea that it's a woman, Reed Richards' name is being floated around a lot.
But I'd heard that was more because they said in the preview, or one of the previous, I think the last episode, there was a bunch of astronauts missing from S.W.O.R.D., right?
Yeah.
So that seems to be more of a fantastic.
People are saying, that looks like quite a Fantastic Four reference, but there's also a lot of people that do think that this aerospace engineer is Reed Richards. There's also someone called Blue Marvel, who I don't really know, who is rumored, and then some people even throwing out War Machine, but it's like, how much is he an aerospace engineer? I don't know.
Engineer, it's just a pilot.
Yeah, he's like a soldier and a pilot, right? Yeah, he's. Yeah, no, I don't know if he's an aerospace engineer, but no. I don't know all their job titles that well, I've got to say.
Yeah, sure.
But
man, I'm so excited now. I just think they could do anything. They could do something so unbelievably significant to the universe. They could introduce something huge.
No, they definitely will.
No cards off the table.
This is going to open it up more than a lot of projects, like Falcon and Winter Soldier, for example. It won't open it up as much as this does. What this does for potentially the whole reality going forward in the multiverse is potentially huge, and just opening up Wanda's power set. And that, again, actually moves us on to the conversation they actually had. Again, Jimmy, Darcy, and Monica had a conversation about Wanda's powers, where Jimmy talks about how she's never shown before any more than, I think, telekinetic, telepathic abilities and some kind of energy manipulation. But Monica is the one, again, showing her genuine intelligence, and I guess more specifically than intelligence, is foresight the right word? Just awareness? She spots things, intuitivity. I don't know what the word is there, but Intuition. There you go. her intuition, in terms of she can go and talk to Wanda and go into the hex, and she finds basically these conclusions that other people don't seem to want to believe, but she's so sure of them. For example, that Wanda has more power than everyone believes, and they don't really believe that Wanda has that power till she actually steps out of the hex and confronts them. So so that was sick. And also they talked briefly about they dropped Captain Marvel's name as someone else who's gotten power from the Infinity Stone, and Monica's reaction to her was a bit like, don't talk about that bitch. So I wonder what happened there as well. Maybe something with not being there for the mum when she had cancer. That's the kind of thing I'm maybe leaning towards, offering the galaxy fighting and not being there for the mum, for Maria.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good shout. I mean, it does make sense because obviously Captain Marvel was off saving every other planet during the whole time in which the purge had happened in the first place after Thanos in Infinity War. So she was off kind of saving other planets and shit, while Monica Rambeau's mum was just fully just having cancer and dying. And so I imagine that from her point of view, that it does look pretty bad.
No, and that's so much as someone that was obviously like an auntie to her, that it is something that would be interesting to explore going forward, definitely. And they also touched upon this idea that Scarlet Witch and Captain Marvel were the only ones that could take down Thanos. They actually said that, and that was also quite interesting to hear. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to touch on one more thing, which was the reveal that Scarlet Witch as a name has never been used. It was that conversation where he's like, no funny nickname or anything like that. And I think a lot of people online are like, oh, does this mean she's not called Scarlet Witch? And I'm like, no, they're just establishing that she's becoming Scarlet Witch. Like, she hasn't yet become Scarlet Witch, and she will become Scarlet Witch. So just to clear that up.
Bit of the Scarlet Witch bit as well. I reckon some of that, when like she's outside the hex and she goes back in and the hex turns fucking like scarlet red when she does all of that.
Yeah.
Part of it, because sort of starting to see how like fucking just how powerful and things are when everything goes red. It's just that's her power.
Yeah.
So I reckon that come from maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. I think I think her becoming the being that she's gonna be, this Scarlet Witch, is something that she's yet to go through. And I think by the time she's in Doctor Strange 2, she will be Scarlet Witch. And I do think it will have something to do with her relationship with Doctor Strange, obviously, as another sorcerer. The hex as well, I do think that the fact that it's hexagonal shape is hinting at some form of hex powers that Scarlet Witch has, because obviously hex is it's like witch powers, isn't it? So I do think that's also something to do with her own witch powers that they're hinting at. Whether I don't know how, if they're going to end up making her a mutant at the end of it, I don't know, or just a witch, but I think she's definitely becoming a witch. It's just really nice, those conversations that, like I was saying, that the philosophical conflicts, I do think you're going to get more and more of them, the more chaos that Wanda causes. It won't just be Tyler v. Monica and Jimmy. It will be governments of all nations, and Shield and Sword and Doctor Strange and potentially Professor X and all of these kind of big minds, the sorcerers, all of them, like, who guard the multiverse, are going to have an opinion on Wanda. I think it's going to get pretty deep. But yeah, rating for the episode and moment of the episode, please, Joel.
10 out of 10, and obviously the moment of the episode is when Evan Petersley shows up. It's just, I was jumping out of my seat, screaming. Great.
Steve?
Yeah, I'll probably give this episode a 10 as well. I thought it was really good. It was the second episode where we've had more links to the MCU, so it's starting to feel really more whole and rounded, and you're getting to see more of kind of Wanda's dark, evil side in terms of how desperate she is to be with Vision, and you get to see Sword developing. Yeah, I can't floor it. I thought it was sick.
Yeah, I agree. 10 out of 10. I think I'm going to be saying this a lot for most of this Marvel stuff coming out. I think this year is going to be a lot of 10 out of 10. I want to praise all the actors. I want to praise Paul Bettany the most, though. For me, he stole the show this episode. Even though Elizabeth Olsen had that really big scene with Wanda, a few big scenes with Wanda, I just think the way Paul Bettany switched and the way he dealt with the confusion and the way he then became serious and also still concerned for Wanda, he played a lot of complex emotion in a short space of time very well, and I'm loving Vision again. I feel like he was kind of cast aside by the Russo brothers. He's shone in Ultron, and he was kind of cast aside in Civil War and Infinity War, and I think now he's becoming a lot of that same interesting character that was introduced. But yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. Oh yeah, my moment of the episode was actually the discussion between Monica and Tyler, just because it hints at what the future of Marvel Universe is going to be. Just them actually contemplating and discussing Wanda's power and her intent behind it. And if Civil War happened, we're going to get stuff like that again. Maybe not just like that. Superheroes may be more banded together, but the governments will be trying to lock down for sure on these powered individuals. So yeah, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for joining me. We're going to be back at you, of course, with more WandaVision. So yeah, keep it locked and loaded. Keep smoking doobies. Keep watching movies. Check out unadulteratedreviews.co.uk. Unscripted, unedited, unadulterated. Like and subscribe to the page. Love and vibe every day. WandaVision, Evan Peters, Quicksilver, Pietro. What are we saying? On to next week. Thank you very much.